Hey folks, Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and today I'm doing yet another edition of the freelancing Q&A live stream that I do in our Circle community. Um, Today I have a question that is basically, how do you handle a client wanting work from you when you're sick? Um, I remember that this came up in a discussion and it was pretty granular and detailed. And the idea was that there was a pretty I guess like tight kind of synchronous back and forth type of interaction between the freelancer and the client where there had been a deliverable submitted and then there was a call for revisions or modifications of some kind, a period during which that could happen. And during this period, the freelancer in question became sick. And so the question really revolved around how to handle telling that client about the sickness and the client having a deadline based on the revision work that the freelancer would be out of commission to help hit. And I guess I can speak to the specifics of that in sort of a I don't know, mercenary way. But then I want to generalize, how do you handle a client wanting work when you're sick? And a core issue that really speaks to the crux of this, that is basically, are you a pseudo employee or are you a business owner, a true independent? So here's what I'm getting at. If, zooming right in on this situation, so you've sent some work over to a client and the client accepts it, and you also, as part of your arrangement, have agreed to do like a second round of work following the submission of the initial work, and then you get sick and you're telling that client, I'm sick, there's nothing I can do here. And the client is essentially kind of in the lurch, like, I need this, I have an actual hard deadline, and I get that you're sick and I feel bad for you. So the question there is, what do you do? And my answer to that is sort of like mercenary and probably hard sounding, which is you refund that client. You committed to having something done. And what you're saying is, for reasons that really aren't the client's problem, although you may be sympathetic, I can't deliver on the thing that I agreed to. To me, there's absolutely no question what you do there. The sentence, I can't deliver on what we agreed to, should be followed, in my opinion, always by, here is your money back, full stop. Now, this really gets into the question of, are you a business owner or are you a pseudo employee? Because, like, think about two scenarios here. Number one, imagine that you commission, let's leave this aside with you casting yourself as the freelancer, but imagine that you hire, for some reason, my brain always goes to plumbers in these examples that I'm making up off the cuff, but you hire a plumber to come out to your house. And the plumber says, okay, I'm going to come out on Wednesday and I'm going to diagnose, I'm going to shut off your water, and I'm going to do some diagnosis and fixing of your leaky toilet and shower or whatever. So I'm going to come out Wednesday. I'm going to need to shut off the water. And then on Thursday, I'm going to return and finish up and turn the water back on. Now, imagine how you react in this situation to the plumber coming over Wednesday, getting into all of it, disconnecting your stuff, shutting off your water, and then calling you Thursday morning and saying, oh crap, I'm sick, sorry. Um, what are you expecting from that plumber exactly? Or is your reaction to that going to be like, oh man, that sucks, I hope you feel better? Do you want me to bring you some soup? Is there anything that I can do for you to make this better? I don't think that's going to be your reaction. I think your reaction is going to be, do you have a partner or somebody that can come over here and finish this? Because I don't have my water. Are you going to refund me for this job? Are you going to give me some credit for future work? I don't feel like you, without the ability to shower, are going to be super sympathetic to this plumber's sickness, even if it is like genuinely sick. Even if maybe they wound up having to go to the hospital, you'll probably sympathize, but like, hey, I hate to be awkward about this, but I'm also without water, which is a pretty major problem for me. So the reason I'm bringing this all up is to think about how you would react to a vendor in this situation. And I don't think the answer is infinite sympathy. So now, if you reverse those roles back, you are that plumber that is saying, yeah, I'm an independent professional, I'm a business owner or whatever. Also, I'm sick, so have some sympathy for me and pay me anyway. Um, the client in that situation if they react in sympathetic fashion, my guess is you have some kind of pseudo employment type relationship with them. Maybe you're doing 40 billable hours a week, week in and week out for them, or maybe it's a standing arrangement where you're doing 20 hours a week or something. But my guess is if there is this, I'm calling in sick and you need to feel bad for me, and by the way, probably pay me anyway, you probably have an employment or an arrangement with them that looks more like employment than it does like true business ownership. Like you probably seem more like one of their employees than like a vendor. So the real question here is, what is your relationship with this vendor? And by the way, if it's the pseudo employee one, is that really the one you want, like long term as a business owner? I feel like I create a lot of, like I just wrote a blog post on Dead Tech about this today, by the way. Do you want to be a pseudo employee or do you want to be a business owner? So with that distinction in the books, it's not that I'm looking to lecture you or anything, but like if you're going to play on the heartstrings of the client, understand that you're doing that as kind of a supplicant and you're acting as if you're one of their employees. Because if you're an employee of a company and you have a deadline coming up, but you get sick, your manager's reaction, if you're at a healthy company, is going to be, hey, I'm really sorry to hear that. Anything you need, whatever. Because that's the relationship that a company has with an employee. It's a much tighter, longer term relationship that has to navigate those ups and downs. So when you as an employer take on employees, you understand that them getting sick is going to be, part of the relationship. It's a thing that happens in life, just like if they're pregnant or having family leave coming up, or if they, need to take a mental health break or they need to take a vacation. As an employer, you understand that life involves all of those things, and that's just something you plan around when you have employees. If, on the other hand, you are a company that opts to work with a vendor, one of the reasons that you work with a vendor is that you can fire them without notice and without messiness. One of the reasons that you work with a vendor is because them getting sick isn't your problem. Their problems aren't your problem. So as a vendor, as an independent, you should be going to a business and saying, hey, all the messy stuff that you have to deal with by hiring employees, I will make that not your problem. It's my problem. And I'm going to charge you higher rates because of it. And I'm going to have a whole different working paradigm. So it's a little bit of a breaking of that covenant for you to say, I am an independent, also give me sick days. It shouldn't really work that way. And if you're finding that it works that way, you're probably looking too much like an employee. And if I can dig it up, I think I did a video at one point for YouTube about, are you quacking like an employee? By the way, if the client is giving you sick time or some approachment thereof, you are quacking like an employee. So leaving that aside, let's say it's the pseudo employment arrangement. So probably for the person asking this question, it is pseudo employment. And for a lot of you wondering, maybe it is, how would you handle this? And here my heuristic would be basically you're handling it the way that you would handle it if you were a salaried employee, so imagine that you have a fairly tight knit team, everybody, and that getting sick is going to create problems for the people on your team. So in as much as you're up for it, if there's anything you can do from your sickness to facilitate, like maybe you've kept some notes about the assignment or the thing that you were doing, you would certainly want to furnish those and make those available. You would want to do anything that you were up for to generally make life easier for the people in question. Given that you're not an employee and there's no actual agreement in place that facilitates you having sick days, you probably want to do your best to play on people's heartstrings, I don't know, try to jump on a call or like record a Loom video or something where you sound just horrendous and try to just drum up whatever sympathy you can. If there's any way that you can show them that you aren't just having the sniffles and that you're truly and deeply sick, it would probably be good context. If you're up for it, brainstorm whatever alternate solutions you can. So I don't know all that much about the specifics of the situation per se, but okay, you were supposed to participate in this deliverable that you're not going to be sick for. Is there anything else they could do? Like, do you know somebody that could pinch hit for you that you could maybe subcontract or pay? Is there somebody at the client site that would be well qualified to do this kind of work? And maybe you could say like, hey, I'm out and I know it's an imposition, but Susie over there can probably handle this. So the more that you can in the state that you're in, instead of just saying, I'm sick, sorry, say, I'm sick, but I would recommend that you do A, B, and C to try to make yourself whole. That's good. So can somebody else do the work for you? Is there a way that you could deliver part of it that you're up for and deliver the rest later to kind of make them whole ahead of whatever this deadline is? Is there a way to push back the deadline that they could take advantage of? And, all this is getting a little bit abstract. But if the thing you had agreed to do is like, I don't know, give a keynote at a conference demonstrating some software, it's probably not the kind of thing you can easily push back or press someone else into service on. But, if it is doing a demo for like a third party, maybe that third party doesn't mind waiting an extra week or something like that. So anything you can do to buy time, to get the deadline extended, to come up with like alternate plans for the client and make them whole. Those are in a true nod to being sick, what you can do if you're truly too sick to do the work. For me, I'm not giving people this advice. This is a do as I say, not as I do. I would do it anyway. Like in this situation, if I were sick, unless I were like literally delirious or unable to sit upright, I would find a way to do something if this was my personal situation. So in as much as I could sit up and muster something up, I would do it. It might be not the best example of my work, but, I would try to ask for apologies there. There's two things going on there. Number one, you're making good on your deliverable technically. And number two, there's the optics of like, working through sickness. But don't go somewhere and make other people sick. I mean, like if you can do this remotely or whatever, I'm not endorsing in any way that you go and expose people to your illness. More than I'm saying, I would try to tough it out as best I could through my fever or cough or whatever. That might be entirely impossible. The thing I would do then is refund the deliverable, and this kind of gets back to what I'm saying in terms of like the professional stakes here. Give the client a discount. So, I mean, maybe it's not like a refund of the whole project or whatever, but maybe you say like, okay, I delivered the rough cut of this. I face planted, granted through adverse circumstances, but I did not deliver the second part. So how about I give you a 50% refund on this? And, I guess like this segues into the second piece of this, which is if you're a seasoned indie, you probably wouldn't find yourself in this situation. So what I'm talking about before is in this kind of like pseudo employment, I'm a freelancer, but not really, because I kind of work for you and I'm kind of asking for a sick day, but not really. And you should feel bad for me. Like when you're simulating employment, you're probably not behaving like a true indie, because behaving like a true indie would result in you probably not really being in the situation in the first place and having clear policies for it if you are in this situation. So what am I getting at here? Like, why wouldn't a true indie be in this position in the first place? And I'm going to draw on my own experience. So let's say that that I were coming up with a deliverable project for a client, and it was going to be delivered over the course of 2 months or something. I would, in looking at that delivery and this offering, I would think to myself, when writing the proposal, what are some things that could happen here? And one of those things would be that I could theoretically get sick at some point. So from a calendar time perspective, if I were going to say, I'm going to deliver this thing over the course of 2 months, I would be baking into my mind the assumption that I might be out of commission for part of the plan. So if I thought that if everything in my life went perfectly, I could deliver this in 2 months, I might suggest at the outset a calendar deliverable date of 3 months to give myself some padding to accommodate for life events or whatever. That's a very crude example, but it speaks to the kind of operationalizing of this that we would talk about as an indie. So as an indie, if you're doing work over the course of time, you have to assume that not everything will go to plan, and you should have contingency plans. So if you are incapacitated in some fashion, what happens? Are you delivering this in milestones? So after you deliver the first quarter of it, could the client pick it up and do it themselves? The same thing after the first half, after the first 3 quarters. So would one contingency be that the client could do it? Another contingency, maybe you have somebody that you work with, collaborate loosely with from time to time, another freelancer. If it came to it, could you reach out to that person and collaborate with them? Maybe you have a standing arrangement where you pitch hit for each other, or maybe you would subcontract work to them. So, baking in timelines, baking in the possibility that things might go wrong. You might, from the outset, if like the deliverable includes, here's a presentation, this thing that I'm going to deliver, here's a revisions window or whatever, you might at the outset build slack into that revisions window and specify to the client, like, look, here's the revisions window, it's 2 weeks. Week 1, I want to be collecting your revisions. Week 2, I'm going to be delivering on them. If you haven't given the revisions to me by the end of week 1, I can probably still work with that, but like I can't make any guarantees because in week 2, like something could come up. Anyway, I'm not going to, in the most abstract way, go down all of these paths, but I hope you see what I'm getting at here, which is that when you are writing business, when you're writing proposals and agreeing to work with clients, you need to be accountable for, I might get sick, I might need vacations, something might happen at my kid's school and I have to take off and go do it. When you have an employer, all of that is built into codified policies through HR. You get a certain amount of PTO days and a certain amount of sick days and all that type of stuff. So there is a parent figure, if you will, planning all that out and letting you operate within it. When you are on your own, there is no parent figure stewarding you through sickness and listening to excuses for when you're sick or whatever. So you become that figure. You have to set out policies on your client's behalf to minimize their risk. You need to establish contingencies and SOPs for them. Now, this might sound a little overwhelming, and it would be if you've never done this before, and so you're thinking about all of this for your first project. But if you've been in indie for a bunch of years, this stuff is going to come up. And when it comes up, you're going to learn a lesson, and you're going to say, oh, okay, I got sick, and I had to refund them some of their money. So next time, I'm going to allow, whatever in the proposal, I'll, write in that I get some sick days in my proposal, or I'll, write in that these milestone timelines have to have this amount of wiggle room, or, whatever the case may be. So once you learn a lesson like this, you will remember it and then bring it to bear in the proposals that you write going forward. You will learn these things over the course of time. So you don't need to do it all at once. But the thing that I would recommend doing immediately for your clients is contingency planning. So as you are doing work and agreeing to do work with clients, what happens if you get sick? What happens if you need a personal day? What happens if life happens? You should be thinking in those terms when you write proposals so that you can get out ahead of those things on your client's behalf. And in the end, if all of that sounds too onerous, it's kind of like, taxes and account management and, bookkeeping and finding business. These are all of the things that an employer handles so that you don't have to when you're employed. If you're out there thinking like, this is way too much for me to manage on my own, there's a reason that if you make $50K a year as a salaried employee, you go out on the market and charge $50 an hour, which is, more than double your salary. It's because you're taking on all of this extra responsibility as an indie. You're taking on all this responsibility for, the taxes, the bookkeeping, all the things I just mentioned. And by the way, contingency planning, because your problems when you're an indie shouldn't be your client's problems. So I don't know if that was that might seem like really tough love or whatever. And probably wasn't the answer that someone asking that question was looking for, but it's kind of the brutal reality of indiehood. So again, to recap, in the situation, which I'm sure this is 2 weeks too late for anyway, but in the situation, play on their heartstrings, try to delay, brainstorm, work through it. I don't know, figure out some way to kind of make ends meet, so to speak, and be prepared to refund them some money because, even though it's not your fault that you got sick, it's not their fault either, and you're not their employee. So, do whatever you can and chalk it up as a life lesson. I would say, if nothing else, the right thing is giving them some financial consideration back, since you did through no fault of your own, but you did fail to deliver. And then over the longer haul, evaluate do I really want to be independent? Do I want to own responsibility for all of life's events that may come up and have nobody there to kind of act as the backstop? Like that all ends with me, the buck stops with me. Do you want that lifestyle? And if the answer is yes, I want that lifestyle, and I want to figure out how to manage it, then you need to think about slack planning and contingency planning for the things that might come up in your life. I mean, within reason. But you do ultimately own the responsibility for all of that, not your clients. So you need to think about how you should address that with each engagement that you take on. So hopefully all of that makes sense, and I will catch you all next time.